Thanks. How are you?
It's like 6 a.m. in your side?
No, it's 8 a.m., so it's very reasonable.
That's good.
How about for you?
It's 7 p.m. in Buenos Aires. It's been a nice day, so
Oh,
good.
beautiful. I'd love to go to
Okay,
Buenos Aires.
I think everyone's getting in here. Let's go ahead and get us started. Let me click a couple buttons. This is the fourth Ethereum Staker Community Call. So, I'm sorry, I'm clicking and talking. I'd like to welcome everyone for hanging out with us. Hopefully, we'll get to involve a lot of the community. I'm glad to see so many people have shown up. I am Superfizz. With me is Lamboshi Nakagini. Is that how you say it? I've never said that.
Yeah, that's roughly correct.
Okay. Paul Hauner, who is with Sigma Prime Lighthouse. Patricio Werthalter, who runs POAP. And anyone else that you kind of know us, let us know and we'll give you an introduction. So today we want to talk about Lighthouse. Actually, I have one more task. Pardon me for... we're going to talk about Lighthouse. But to begin with, let's see. I want to do introductions first and then talk about POAP. And then we'll get into talking with Paul. So if you have questions, feel free to write them in the chat. And we'll go from there. So again, I'm Superfizz. I am a moderator at reddit.com/r/ETHstaker. Our goal is to promote the Ethereum staking community. And that just means giving everyone a better awareness of the tools and the process for staking on Ethereum 2, which is not yet live, but will hopefully be live sometime by the end of this year. So Lamboshi, if you want to go ahead.
Lamboshi, I'm working to set up this call and just try to get people comfortable running their own nodes instead of shipping all their money over to Coinbase and Binance. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you know, we want to do it ourselves, decentralized.
And Paul Hauner.
Hey, I'm Paul. I'm a co-founder and director of Sigma Prime. I've been a software developer for about 10 years, and I was working on Casper CBC for a while, which I still love dearly, and then started working on ETH2 just before it was announced publicly back in, I think, what was it, 2018. So I've been on ETH2 kind of since its inception, before there was even an official spec. And now I'm one of the lead developers on Lighthouse, pushing through to ETH2 production.
Cool, cool. Thank you. And Patricio.
Hello, everyone. I run POAP. For those who don't know, POAP issue non-fungible tokens to people that attend conferences, community calls, or whatever that has a point in time. So we want the POAPs to be integrated on governance in Ethereum 2. So for example, there are going to be many different variables to set whether how many epochs do you want to pass between something, on how many validators it's reasonable to, or issuance or whatever. And if we put a POAP on the hands of every person involved in the community, it would be way easier and accurate to gather community sentiment and opinions. And that's really lacking, because governing Ethereum 1 has been a big pain, and you don't really know what the community feels about proc power node, or how do they like to do issuance or to discuss issuance, or what gets on different hard forks and what to put in and what not, and what the cost should be of every opcode. So my objective here is to get POAPs in the hands of all of you, even the speakers and moderators. And hopefully soon we will be launching some starting polls, like what time do you want the call to happen? And you can only vote if you have the POAP. That's one of the use cases. We are also working on the ETH Stakers Discord for having private channels for people that holds POAPs. So for example, if you need technical support because your node doesn't sync, or it doesn't sync in the way you want it to sync, and you are a community member, instead of having to put the post on Reddit and wait for someone to answer, you could have access to a community of dedicated people. So please make sure you all get the POAPs. I think they're going to be distributed anytime soon. If you don't get it for whatever reason, reach out to us and we will get it delivered. If you have any suggestion or you want to learn something about POAP, feel free to reach out to me. And please enjoy the call and the guest of honor we have today.
Great. Thank you so much, Patricio. I know a lot of people are excited about POAP. And so I received mine in a PM from Lamboshi. If you didn't, again, just ping him and say, hey, I missed one.
I'm working on it.
You're doing great.
Yeah,
I'd love to get those in the hands of everyone today. So let's get on with the agenda. If you haven't seen the agenda yet, you can view it on my GitHub, github.com/superfizz/ETHstaker. It's under the agendas. Basically, we just want to talk a little about Lighthouse. We met with Paul yesterday and talked about some of the big topics. And so we're really excited to hit those today. Paul, do you want to tell us about Lighthouse? Or actually Sigma Prime and Lighthouse, what your preference there?
Yeah, sure. I can do a little intro to Sigma and then go into Lighthouse if you like. So Sigma Prime was formed by myself and 3 others back in 2016, actually, just after DevCon 2 in Shanghai. So we had been working in Ethereum for a while at our local meetups, and we've been getting a lot of attention from people that wanted us to work. So we thought we'd found Sigma Prime kind of on the side and see how it goes. And we really found our footing in security reviews. We have a pretty strong information security background. So we started doing security reviews, and then eventually, we all quit our day jobs and ended up with Sigma Prime. So it's been, I think 3 years now, coming on three or 4 years since Sigma Prime was founded, and it's doing really great. So we had been doing security reviews and penetration testing, which is like where you hired by a company to assess the security of their infrastructure by attacking it and then reporting back on what you can find. So we've been doing these type of things, and then eventually I got, I'd always been interested in proof of stake for a few reasons. I quite like the security properties of it, and I'm also a big fan of the reduced energy consumption. So I started working on Casper CBC, and then eventually we started, then there was the sharding manager contract, which was kind of like while I was working on CBC, then the sharding manager contract picked up, and I'd been working with Danny Ryan on CBC, and he started doing the sharding manager contract. So Sigma Prime put in a application to build a validator client for the sharding, the sharding contract, which was where you have like a contract on F1 that controls the F2 shards. But it became pretty obvious that we couldn't really get the bandwidth we needed for like a fully sharded proper proof of stake Ethereum via that. So Ethereum 2 was became in the works, I guess, by Vitalik. He had this HackMD document that was like the spec back then, which was all, there was no code, it was just all written. It was quite difficult to understand. So I picked that up, and our previous grant application for the sharding manager contract got deprecated because F2 was coming. So then we kind of like just rolled with the punches, started implementing that specification from Vitalik, and I'm not sure if we were the first or after the Python implementation or what Prism we're up to then. But it was definitely us or Prism that had one of the first implementations. So we've been in there since the beginning. And since then, Lighthouse has really kind of evolved from this side project of me trying to figure out the spec by writing it down in code through to a real production client, thanks to the support of the Ethereum Foundation and Consensus and Vitalik and all these people who have believed in Lighthouse and funded it. So Lighthouse, as it stands now, is very much intending to be one of the first clients at production. I'm quite confident we will be. We have a focus, because of our background in security, we have a focus on building secure applications. So we want to build a client that is correct, it adheres to the specification, that it's stable and secure, that you have a good uptime, and people can't craft messages or attacks that can try and bring us down. And a part of this, we're also looking at performance. We're written in Rust, which is a modern systems programming language. So systems programming is like for back-end things. So it's a language where it's a little bit difficult to understand, but it gives you a lot of control over the hardware that you're running on. And it also means, which means we can write quite fast software. So a part of being secure means also being performant, so that if people can craft malicious messages, we can process them quickly and we don't get bogged down in a denial of service attack. So we're focusing on being fast and performant. And something else we're also focusing on now is staking. So these two properties kind of work pretty well for a staking client. If it's fast, it means it has low resource consumption, which means that your overheads for staking are quite low. And if it's secure and correct, then it would mean that you're less likely to go down and have downtime. So because of this, now we've started another project, which is to build a user interface for Lighthouse. So we're systems programmers, mainly the core team of Lighthouse. So we've reached out to a product design team, Akil from Empire, who's designing. You get to see some screenshots later, actually, the first time we've released them. He's designing a user interface for staking, designed to be like very entry level, kind of hold your hand through the whole process. And then we're also engaging a front end design team to build this. So it'll be a kind of like web first application that connects to your validator client, allows you to start, stop, control, and see your validators. I think that's a lot of it. Is there anything I missed, or perhaps that was a bit too much?
I think it was a lot. It was good. So I'm still learning to do this part of it, and it's hard to process all of it. But yes.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I've had to answer that question a few times, so perhaps I've stored a little bit too much answers in my head, and I need to.
Well, no, it was so. For my part, and Nolan, I hope you'll join me here. I bounce in and out of consciousness, and I'm like, yeah. So, thank you. So,
No worries.
Long answer short, I didn't process what you said, but I'm sure it's great.
That's fine. Yeah. So I started at my birth, and I ended up here. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna chillax a little bit. Hey, I would like to maybe go ahead and unmute the room as we go through this. Is that something that works for you at this point? So
Well, do you want to do the UI thing quick?
Yeah, the UI demo. That's great. Nolan, if you want to share your screen and hop on the UI demo, then we will open it up after that.
One moment.
So UI demo is perhaps a little bit advanced for what we're doing. So what we've done is I've asked Akil, who's doing the user interface design here, to kind of share some of the wireframes he's been doing. So he has some videos and stuff like this, but he wasn't quite ready to share those. So what he has made is some teasers to demonstrate the processes that we've been going through in designing this user interface. So it's really not we're not hacking this thing together. So we started with a research phase, and we went out and interviewed, I think, on the order of 100 people to understand what their needs and wants and desires were for staking. Hopefully some of the people in this call managed to get some input into it. And now we're in the process of wireframing. As you can see, we've got quite a lot of wireframes down, and then we're going to move into development. So the UI is kind of split into two phases. We have the onboarding phase, and then we have the dashboarding phase. So what you can see here is the user journey flow for, it is a bit small. The resolution is not great. I think the idea is that it was like to kind of just show the general process as opposed to the detail, but hopefully we can share some more detail in a little bit. So we're putting a lot of this kind of takes through the whole key generation phase. So we want to like walk people's hand all the way through from, like, here you are, you've downloaded the application, it's running. Now this is how your keys work. This is where you're going to put them. This is what you're going to be required to do. Here's some links to read some more. So we're really, really, really trying to handhold through this process. so I think there's another one. Yeah. So we're going to be tracking, like really trying to hold people's hand and show them that, your nodes are syncing, and avoid allowing them to start doing actions before you're ready. Like if you submit your staking deposit to F1 before your beacon node syncing, there's this kind of minor chance that your beacon node doesn't finish syncing in time and you start losing money. So we're really trying to avoid this type of things. We're also looking at really describing what's involved for people. We really want to lower the barrier to entry, so people can really understand what's required of them before they commit to dropping their money in. I think the next one is a health check too. So we're going to add in a whole bunch of monitoring to try and keep an eye on the system that the validator client's running on. You can get these kind of in-browser pop-ups of, your RAM's low or your disk is low, you're getting errors, things like this. And then eventually we can link this into other services like PagerDuty, where we can start pushing out notifications via SMS and email if your validator client's having troubles. So it's not a whole lot to see, but hopefully it's a little bit of an idea of the things that are coming for ETH2 and Lighthouse.
Awesome. Looks really good to me. I've said it before. I love a good UI, so
Yeah. I think
makes it much more user.
A lot of people are keen for it. What we saw from the survey was that really a lot of people want UIs, even very technical, like the researchers building the specification actually want a UI just because they want it to be easy.
Bitcoin Core had a UI and a Windows implementation like pretty early on. I think it was originally
Windows. The first Bitcoin client was written for Windows.
Huh. Well, there's a fun
Didn't know
fact.
that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so do we want to start unmuting some people? Let's see.
Yeah. So, did we talk about hardware spec
earlier?
Did
no,
we talk about the minimum hardware spec?
No, not yet.
Can you share with us, Paul, what the minimum hardware spec would be?
Yeah, sure. So minimum hardware spec is a little bit difficult at this time. So there's kind of a known hardware specification, like there's a known requirements that we have now to run the beacon chain in ideal conditions. So a beacon chain in ideal conditions, like smooth C, so to speak, uses some amount of resources, right? But then in rough seas, we're going to be using more resources to process, bad blocks and dealing with forks and things like this. So we currently have a reasonable idea about what it looks like in smooth sailing. And we need to do some more testing. Once we have big multi-client testnets up, we need to start doing some coordinated attacks and pushing clients up to their limits to see, how many resources they need, because you kind of want to avoid the case where you buy you set up your system so that you're just like kind of at just under, like smooth sailing, you're just under the limit. And then if someone can craft some attacks, it pushes you over the limit and you go down. So with that kind of caveat in mind, we have our latest 16,000 validated testnet. So something to remember is that the resource consumption is very much dictated by the validator count. So we expect to launch F2 mainnet with at least 16,000 validators. It's not clear at the moment how many will show up, but we're thinking it might be on the order of 30,000 to 100,000 showing up. So with our 16,000 validator testnets, we have some running now that are using less than 300 meg of RAM. So that's a beacon node and a validator client running 2,000 validators. And those two together are using a bit less than 300 meg of RAM. But we do have some cases where we're seeing higher usages up in the order of 800. So we can kind of get this idea of the range. But we really expect that number to go down as we keep focusing on reducing memory consumption. And in terms of CPUs, I think you want something with at least 2 CPUs, just because this allows your system to kind of like still handle network messages while it's doing some heavy processing. So I'd be saying, so all of our test nets so far have all run on an AWS T2 medium instance. So that's 2 CPUs, 4 gig of RAM. And that's been plenty for us so far. We did try to run 100,000 validator testnet on that, but we started to run out of RAM because we were with Geth. But our latest numbers for 100,000 validators is looking at about 1 to 2 gig of RAM. So perhaps that gives you a bit of an idea. These instances are pretty small. And this is something that we're really focusing on, is reducing the memory consumption, because that's probably the biggest overhead for stakers. Sorry.
No, yeah. You described the rough C scenario. So what happens in a rough C scenario? Does that mean that that the local machine stops providing attestations while it chews through the data, or what is that?
Yeah, it means that so the kind of like the first thing that you'll start to see happen is you'll start to fall behind the head. So like the head is the latest block in the canonical chain. So if you're kind of lagging behind in resources, you won't just be able to keep up with the head. So you'll start attesting to blocks that are a little bit earlier than the head. And this means that I think you'll still be able to get attestations out, because producing an attestation is a very light on task. But processing and verifying attestations is where it's heavy. So you'll still be able to get your attestations out, but they'll be attesting to things that are slightly older than they should be, which starts to reduce your rewards, not to zero, but you'll start to be missing out. Perhaps on maybe a third of your attestation awards, you would start to be missing out on.
Is that a scenario that would lead to missing a window to propose a block because you're not caught up, and then you can't go ahead? I think you understand.
Yeah,
the
that's
question,
right.
so.
Yeah, so you'd be producing a block off, instead of producing it off the head, you'd be producing it off the head's parent, so one behind. And you've created a fork in the network then, and then it's kind of a bit of a chance as to see who finds your block or the next block is the head. So this is a case, where you start missing blocks too. I think missing blocks is blocks are likely to happen every few days. So I'm mostly concerned about the attestations because they're constantly ongoing, but you definitely don't want to be missing blocks either.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much.
No worries.
I'm going to probably summarize that and make a Reddit post so it shows up on Google. Okay, do you want to start?
Nice.
Let's unmute some people. Actually, earlier.
Joseph C has a question. I'm going to go, and he I believe already has. In fact, I might let you manage. Let's for the moment give everyone access to ask questions as they see fit. We'll open up the conversation, and if we need to go from there, we will.
Okay. Please be nice to us.
The question I had was, it looks like all of a sudden everyone got unmuted. Okay, I'll just go ahead. Secret shared validator client. Do you have a plan for that, or and when?
Hi Joseph, by the way, just remembered I have a nice email that I have to reply to you. Sorry for not replying to that.
No problem.
Chat to you. Secret sharing validators, that's not something that is on our radar. So you mean like a multi-party computation kind of validator?
Yeah, that's right. And in the post I wrote, it's basically, in case some Binance offers free staking, if there's like, if we also want them to just not have unilateral control of the validator, but we also want, say, Sigma Prime and Prismatic Labs to also at least add a second signature to make sure that it's, what they're proposing is, not attacking the network.
Yeah, so that's a good question.
Basically that kind of thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I know the research team has been designing the system in a way that's possible. It's not something that we have focused on at the moment, just because we kind of have our hands full with the minimum requirements, and that's a little bit advanced, but definitely something we'd be keen to get into. And that's the sort of complicated, interesting stuff that Sigma Prime likes to get involved in. So I think it's probably a future consideration at this point. but I don't have much I could tell you in the way of it. I'm sorry.
No problem. Thanks.
Pablo earlier in the meeting asked a good question, and he was wondering what's the best thing people can do to assist ETH2 developers.
Oh, it's a good question. It's difficult. I think one of the things that'll be handy is when we get the UI out is to have people beta test and give us feedback on it. It's great when people try and run test nets, share with us the things that are difficult with them, and share the bugs that they have in good descriptions. These are all very useful. And I think something that people can do too is just to learn things and then share the information online, because we spend a bit of time answering people's questions. Sometimes they're repeat questions. So people that are out there, like understanding things and writing blog posts, they're helping people get across it, and kind of reducing a bit of load on developers and researchers and stuff for answering questions. So some of the ways that I can think of offhand. If you're a Rust developer, then you can definitely contribute, but there's not a whole lot of Rust developers out there. Or Go developers or NIM developers, anybody. You can jump on and start closing issues too. That's another way.
Is the Discord your primary social contact?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if you want to get a hold of us, go via the Discord.
Well, as far as questions, question helping and providing support, is that also through Discord?
Yeah, totally. Definitely through Discord. A lot of our team is based in Sydney, Australia. So our times are a little bit odd compared to everybody else. But we're not 9-to-5ers. So our times are also odd compared to Sydney. So just be aware, if you don't get an answer straight away, it might just be a time zone thing.
This is one of the same questions we talked about yesterday. Failover, node failover when you're running your validator keys on one station with a beacon chain. Is there a plan? And I know the answer to this, but I want to give you a chance to say it again. A plan to allow failover to a second beacon chain node?
Yeah, sure. So there's two things in this question. So there's two ways you can fail over. One way you can fail over is you have one validator client and then you have multiple beacon nodes. So you have this one validator client is connected to, say, the first beacon node, and they're talking together. And then for some reason it detects that this beacon node, it's not giving it a good quality of service. So then it swaps over to the next beacon node. This is something that's quite straightforward. We haven't implemented it yet just because we kind of want to nail down the base cases before we start swapping around things like this. But that's quite straightforward. And by design, our validator client, I think everyone else's validator client, is designed to be able to handle that. But what a lot of people I've noticed are thinking about doing is the different type of failover where instead of one validator client, multiple beacon nodes, you have kind of multiple validator clients, each running the same keys. And then you kind of have one that's, in the background off, one's running. Then if this goes down, you have an automated failover script to swap between the two of them. So this is a different kind of failover system. And I think this is the one that's kind of worth considering a bit, because the risk that you run when you have the same key in two different pieces of software, two different machines, is this is the perfect scenario for slashing. So if you just have one validator client, we have some typical, we have software protecting against slashing, and it's, as long as there's no serious bugs in our code, it's impossible to be slashed. But when you have these two disparate systems, and you kind of rely on these kind of third-party ways to try and swap your keys over with your own scripts, this is where you are definitely running the risk of slashing. This is textbook case of how people get slashed, I think. So now we understand that if we have these two validated clients, now we have this swapping between the two, and this swapping between the two of them is risky. And the risk is on the order of losing, half your stake and being ejected as a validator. So that's quite a large risk if that scenario goes wrong. So then we need to look at, by having these two validators, what scenario are we protecting against? What's our risk versus reward here? So our reward is that if we do manage to successfully swap over between validators, we've reduced some downtime. So then we say, okay, what's downtime worth in ETH2? So I have a little Stack Overflow. Maybe I'll share it with it later so I don't, get my mechanical keyboard making a bunch of noise. But when you're offline as an ETH2 validator, if you're offline, now this comes with a big caveat because there's rewards and penalties in ETH2 are not straightforward. It's not like proof of work. Like you produced a block, here's your ETH, goodbye. In ETH2, the rewards and penalties are like, there's divisors and things are going on, and it's like the amount you get is relative to how much there is. But if we take, say, the standard case where we have 16,000 validators at Genesis, and the network's kind of chugging along as normal, if you go offline for a week, you stand to lose 0.3% of your stake. So then we go back to looking at this scenario where we've got these two validator clients, and we're hot swapping between the two of them. And what we're trying to do, so if we didn't have hot swapping and one went down for a week and came back up, we've lost 0.3% of our stake, which is really quite small. So then we start to think that, like if you're just profit focused, you start to think, well, is it even worth it for me to have this slash over thing, this swap over thing? Because like I can be away on holidays for a week and then come back, and then I've only lost a fairly small amount of money. So there's definitely an argument saying if you're a small staker, a hobbyist staker, then the failover system is probably a little bit more risk than it's worth. But then you have, on the other hand, you have this kind of bit of another problem on your other hands where you say, so everyone's a hobbyist staker, everyone decides it's not worth it for them to set up this like redundant system. So then everyone goes away on, like whatever type of, or like holidays, end of the year holidays.
Para mí eso, linda, que me acabo de mandar.
Sorry. Yeah, so people go away on holidays, and then someone attacks the network. Now everyone's on holidays, network's down, no one's got failover, the network's just kaput. So we have this problem where, like we need some people to make sure that they have these sophisticated systems. So my feeling would be that if you are a sophisticated staker, perhaps you're probably more likely to have more stake on the line, and perhaps you have some pretty serious engineering resources behind you, then I think it would be smart for you from a profit perspective, because you have more stake to lose, to run these failover systems. And I think that you would probably be more likely to be successful at the failover systems than maybe someone who's just a hobbyist and is likely to maybe make a mistake here.
It's difficult because I'm wondering to myself, am I a hobbyist or do I have a real stake in it? Like it's difficult to guess, is that someone with, 3 validators, someone with 330 validators, someone with 3,000 validators? And I know that answer is different for everyone. It depends, I guess, on your actual net worth, but it's, I'm like, well, I don't know where I fall.
Yeah, I guess maybe you say like, okay, I have 3 stakers, 0.3% is, how much money? And then do I know how to build this? Do I have a confidence in myself to build this failover system? And if you can afford to lose the money and you don't really have the confidence in yourself, then you'd definitely be in the let's not bother case, I would guess.
Well, that's a great calculation to think about what dollar value 0.3% of your hold would be, because that's the balance of whether or not it's worth getting that, either hiring it out or doing it. One thing that keeps coming up, and I love it, back to hardware. And I know, we don't have the full client yet, so it's still difficult for hardware, but we see the range from things like Raspberry Pis. If you would address Raspberry Pi specifically, and then something like AWS and let's ask that separately. Can we just begin? Can you show your perspective on staking from Raspberry Pi?
I know that a lot of people want to. That was one of the things from our survey, was that people really, really, really want to stake with Raspberry Pis. I think because they're cheap, but I think there's also, I don't know, there's something, the Raspberry Pis are cute, they're fun. And the idea of being able to do this decentralized blockchain on this like little open source computer you found, I think is appealing to people. So people definitely want to do it. and we want to make people happy, we test. I have a Pi 4 around here somewhere. We've been testing on it. We really want to be able to support it. It's looking good at this stage, but we do need to go into scenarios where we start, doing malicious testing of these Raspberry Pis. Like before, I would like to say, yes, 100% you can stake on a Raspberry Pi.
So that is, I was like, is that the final answer? Yes.
It's a firm maybe.
I'm pushing.
So if I had to bet, if you made me bet on it now, I would say that we're going to be able to stake on Raspberry Pis. But I'm not ready to make the call yet until we've seen multi-client testnet with sophisticated malicious actors on it. So that's something that we haven't seen on existing public testnets now, is sophisticated malicious actors. That's what we're going to be,
exciting.
Sophisticated and malicious, with good intentions at heart.
So there's a follow-up to that. And you mentioned the minimum AWS requirements. One of the things that I talk a lot about, and I'm not even really sure if I'm on the right path, is I discourage people from planning to stake on AWS because of the outage problem. If AWS went down, which we have to kind of consider to be a real possibility, then that means if everyone's on AWS, it's a large swath of validators down and massive leakage. Do you have, at least that's the way that I've viewed it, do you have a perspective on whether AWS or any kind of VPS is a good idea, or whether people should plan to stake from their home or local area?
Yeah, I think it depends. I mean, so not everyone is going to be able to stake from home. I know, like myself, I've lived in rental properties for a while, and you don't necessarily get the internet you want. You don't have the control, the ability to control the internet you get, or the reliability if you're in share houses and things like this, especially on university campuses. It's quite possible you're just not going to be able to stake at home at all. And I think that staking on a cloud platform is acceptable. I think we definitely want to have a mix. So we don't want everyone hopping on AWS, like you said, is a bad thing. But having some people on AWS, having other people on, like Google Cloud Platform, other things like this, I think is a reasonable idea. I know myself, I'm able to stake from home now because I'm kind of permanently in this house. But in the past, I definitely would have staked on AWS. For just something interesting is that, so we do all our testing on AWS. And one of the reasons we chose that is because Prism does all their stuff on Google Cloud. So we're already trying to get the teams to spread out across the cloud platforms.
Great, that was a perfect answer. Thank you.
Great.
Let me see what we got. And I'm sorry, this is something I don't actually understand. A plan to deploy Lighthouse via infrastructure as code. A plan to deploy.
Oh yeah, so
can you explain that? I'm sorry, I'm just not aware. A
yeah,
plan
so
to deploy Lighthouse for.
I guess it's a question about DevOps. Oh, actually, I'm not sure either. So it's a question about about DevOps. Yeah, okay. How we run our testnets at Lighthouse is via Ansible. So Ansible is made by Red Hat. They make a distribution of Linux. And Ansible is a way to create AWS servers, deploy software, DevOps and automation, deploy software to them and then manage them. So we have an open source repository. So all of the DevOps stuff we use to manage our testnets is open source at sigp/lighthouse-ansible. There's a pull request that has the main like master at the moment isn't what we're using. There's a pull request that has what we're using. So our Lighthouse testnets are 2 commands. So we go from nothing, like no AWS systems, nothing exists. And then we run 1 command to deploy the deposit contract. And then we run another command to deploy all of the AWS infrastructure across like end machine. We have 16 machines across 4 regions at the moment. And then we have another script which installs Lighthouse on them, installs everything on them, sends the configuration to them, connects the boot nodes, and then starts the network. So we have like a fair bit of DevOps automation going on for Lighthouse now. And our plan is to eventually turn these into a set of kind of reusable Ansible modules. So people that are familiar with automating their DevOps stuff can just pick up the code that we've written and go forward and deploy their own servers with ease. Excuse me.
Great. Patricio, did you have a question?
I did have a couple. I think they are somewhere on the chat. So one that I didn't ask in the chat, but I still want to know. Early on, when there were going to be 1,034 shards, I heard that some staker may have a slight advantage if he could manage to get a huge Ether to have a validator on every shard.
Ah.
I'm not sure if I'm not sure on the attack of getting a validator on each shard. I know that if you can get a validator on, if you can get like a large amount of validators on one shard, then you can start to grief the shard. You can, get it to, you can stop it from following ahead, and you can get it to choose forks. And in the worst case, you can get it to decide on some junk block. So I think that was the attack that I know of, was that, because you kind of take the whole validator set and you split it into 1,024, and if you can manage to be a majority of one of those small committees, then you can cause a lot of grief there.
By the way, yes, that was the question. The 1,024 number is not current anymore. What's the current number now? It's 64.
I believe it's 64. And then it kind of it grows and shrinks with the validator count, but I think 64 is what we can expect to see when we go to mainnet.
It grows and shrinks with validator count. Is that on the spec? That's the amount of shards grows like programmatically?
Yeah, it is in the spec, but it's not written in a way that says, it's not written clearly. It's very deep inside some Python, some code. So yeah, it's the spec itself it's quite difficult to read and determine these type of things from it. And hopefully, as people go on, they can start to write these more human-friendly versions of it. Especially because the spec's been changing a lot too, so it's been hard for people to do that. But now it's become firm. Hopefully, we can see more people writing human-readable things.
Yeah, that's one of the cases that I think having something like POAP Vault could help, because I don't think core client developers really have a perfect grasp on the actual people using the network. And maybe you do because your company does lots of work on ETH1. But sometimes I feel like people that have dApps on mainnet don't really have a voice on the choices that are made for the two.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it's a very technical discussion that happens around the protocol, and the barrier to entry is quite significant for it. I know that when I first started, I was very scared of asking questions because I felt like I might be asking basic questions or making myself look like an idiot. Perhaps this is like something people are concerned about as well. Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've seen some great stuff. I remember last DevCon in Japan, we had some panels. We got to see some really interesting stuff from dApp developers. I guess I definitely don't want to put the blame on them. But I would say to them that if they do feel like getting involved, then they should just absolutely just start asking questions, because there's like, it's a cliche, but there's no dumb questions, and people in ETH2 understand it's highly technical, and we're keen to hear from people. So jump in.
That's easy to say, but it's not that easy to execute, because there's no single place for someone to ask questions. Like if I'm a dApp developer, which I am, and I want to ask something about ETH2, my options are either go to one of the client developers, which might not be the accurate place, or go to the ETH2 research Discord, where I may feel that I'm kind of an idiot.
The Stack Overflow that isn't that, Paul, what you were talking about? The ETH2 Stack Overflow seems like the right place for that.
Yeah, so I've been writing, like I check the Stack Overflow every couple of days. I answer any questions that come up. So I'm trying to help there. Yeah, I agree that I think that F2 R&D is probably the place for it. But I know it's definitely easily said, but you really don't need to be afraid of looking like an idiot in there, because everyone understands that it's not simple to get your head across the spec. Yeah.
We have another question by Joseph C. Joseph is asking, everyone in
No,
here...
this is for everyone, mainly, not for Paul.
Okay.
Thanks, yeah.
I would say I wouldn't be willing to do that. I want to do it myself. It's decentralization, right?
Joseph, do you want to go ahead and explain your question, and then we can banter about it for a moment?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I know that everyone here is mostly do it yourself. So definitely if everyone says no, that's the sentiment of this group. But basically, if there were companies that offered staking without fees, but it's also secure for the network because, you use things like secret shared validator clients, would you be comfortable, giving those, like one company a share of your validator private key, and then another company and another share of it, or even more. It just seems to me like it's one of the easier, even easiest ways to run things.
Aside from a yes and no, and it's not my place to answer this question directly, but I worry that what appears to us to be two companies upstream is really just one company with two faces, or whether company A, B, and C are all subsidiaries of a different company, and you're giving each of them a part of your key, in reality giving them full control over the key.
Okay, yeah. Well, the ones that I was thinking of were things like Prismatic Labs, and maybe Sigma Prime as well if they do something like that. Oh, at the beginning they'll at least be independent, I think, from Binance.
Binance should be the. I shouldn't joke because someone will take it seriously. Someone will drink the bleach, but say Binance should be the safest place to stake your Ethereum too. Let's send it all there. Yeah. Thank you, Joseph, for that question.
Sure. Just to Bjorn, if I said his name wrong, sorry. To his comment here about the withdrawal address is yours. Would it matter? Yeah. So my question is more about like the do it yourself, because even if it was like easy, then the do it yourself people will still want to do it themselves. But yeah, you can keep your withdrawal key to yourself, and just give the validator shares of the validator private key to others. And to me, it seems like pretty good, the benefit and trade-off. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Joseph. Patricio has another question that it is a more of an ETH dev question, but I'm interested to hear a lot of different perspectives about how the migration of ETH1 onto the ETH2 chain should or might occur. Do you have thoughts on that, Paul?
Yeah, so this is something that I don't get particularly involved in at the moment, is the migration thing. I'm very much head down delivering phase 0, but I do keep an eye across it because it affects the project in the medium and long term. I like the current philosophy of trying to get F1 into F2 as soon as possible, and taking what we have as F1 and trying to get a proof of stake as soon as possible. I quite like that. There's some talk about perhaps the existing F1 clients being reused and connecting to the current beacon nodes to get the canonical sense of what the beacon chain is, but then keeping all of the execution and transaction processing inside F1 because we don't want to do rework, and they're pretty good at it. So this is appealing for me. I don't know if it's just appealing to me because it means someone else has to do it. but even without that, I think it's appealing because it's fast, and it means that we don't reinvent the wheel, and we keep using battle hardened software instead of writing new ones. So I quite like that idea, but that stage of the specification is like definitely subject to change.
Yeah, in fact, it's funny. I don't know how similar you are. I'm so focused on Beacon Chain right now that I haven't really looked at the spec for phase 1 and phase 2 in probably over a month. Of course, I'm an end user, but I guess you're probably similar. You're so focused on phase 0 implementation that it doesn't really matter right now for you what's going on in phase 1 and phase 2. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's right. We kind of like try and keep a side eye on it so it doesn't blindside us. But I think, it's like really, I think the best thing for us now is to focus on phase 0 and get that down. And the research team, the ETH research team, Danny and Dalek and Justin, they do a good job of highlighting the things that are relevant to us. So we don't have to, we can focus on it. So yeah, I'm very much in the same boat as you.
Yeah. So in a different direction, we've been looking upstream, looking downstream. We had brought up Rocket Pool yesterday, and maybe even other services. Attestant, I know, is another service that we know through Jim McD, who provides a lot of support. What are your thoughts about using? Let's do Rocket Pool specifically. We know they've integrated Lighthouse. Do you have any thoughts or perceptions about stakers using that either as a node user or a node operator?
Yeah, I mean, I know I've been around Rocket Pool because they're also from Australia. There's not a whole lot of us in Australia, so we get to know each other. I like the team at Rocket Pool. I think they're good guys, and they've been in here for quite a while. I think staking pools definitely have their place. Obviously, you don't want everyone to jump in one staking pool because then we have a big centralization risk. But I don't think that staking pools are inherently bad, and I think they definitely have value to add to the system. I think it'd probably be a shame if people that Rocket Pool is not, everyone doesn't just run on the Rocket Pool server. It's not fully centralized. They do spread their machines about. So given that, I think it would be perhaps a shame if we were to miss out on stakers where the only reason that they would stake is if they could do it in that way. So I think they definitely have a place in the community, and I think they look forward to working with them and supporting their application.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Anyone else want to speak up with a question?
Can you give an update on where we're at with Schlessie and the multi-client test nets?
Oh,
and
yes.
maybe where, when are we going to launch the one?
Yeah, sure. Sure. So Schlessie is AFRI from F1/parity, X parity. He has been jumping in and getting involved and running clients. He's been really invaluable. Really enjoyed his input, him testing things, his really detailed bugs. So he's definitely pushing forward with Schlessie. There at the current stage, he is kind of just going around and figuring out which clients can run, just trying to connect the things together, just kind of sitting on the floor with his legs cross-plugging things together and seeing what happens and reporting bugs. But I think that it shows it's a very promising initiative. And I think he plays a very important part in bridging the gap between the teams. Not that the teams are, like hostile to each other or anything like this. We are very much heads down and focusing on our own thing. So having this person who's kind of independent and is like, bringing the teams together, connecting things together is really great. I think Afri's last comment was that he needs maybe 6 weeks or something. Expecting clients to be ready in about 6 weeks for a big multi-client testnet. This sounds reasonable to me. I think we'll probably see some more longer-lived multi-client testnets coming in the next few weeks. And then once we can prove that those little testnets work together, then we can go and shoot for the big multi-client testnet. So what is it now? It's May now?
May 4th?
I would,
4th, yeah. May 5th.
May the 4th, that's right. Yeah, it is.
You have a list coming on there, but May the 4th.
May the 4th be with you. So yeah, I think next month we can hopefully see a bigger multi-client testnet.
Does that?
But I think
I'm sorry. I saw some of those timelines. We were all we looked at. So July was the big. We get single client testnets in April, and then I think people speculated that May through July would be multi-client. Has the window been pushed back? Because it appears that things are running very well. It looks like for one of the first times, and I didn't mean that derogatorily, but things are just humming along and improving very quickly. But it also appears at the same time that the window is being pushed back. Is that accurate, or is that a misunderstanding?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think ETH2 is being pushed back quite a few times. There was this kind of idea that perhaps we'd have something in like a mainnet in January, December or something. That definitely didn't eventuate. So being pushed back is something that's happened. I think multi-client testnets are happening a little bit later than we expected. I know for us, the delays for us are coming through on the networking side. The networking stuff is really complicated, and getting it to be super solid is difficult. So yeah, I would agree that it's been pushed back a bit.
Is libp2p still on track working? And I haven't heard that in a while. So is it coming along?
It's doing really well for us.
Okay.
So yeah, we all need to update. Gossip Sub is kind of a protocol in libp2p that we're using in ETH2. We're in version 1 of it now. We need to do an update to version 1.1. So that's something that's kind of come down the track before we can get like fully mainnet ready specification. So I think this is like something that keeps coming up, is like fully mainnet ready, but then like there's always a caveat to it. So we're getting close, but that's just there's just still a few things to deal with.
Great. So Mariano Conti asks how the audit is going.
Oh yeah, good question. So we are going to start. So we're doing kind of a 2-phase audit. So I mentioned before Gossip Sub. We need to bring in the new version of Gossip Sub. Gossip Sub is like very high level overview. It's how we broadcast network messages across the network. And broadcasting is a scary thing because it's kind of just like yelling at the network, and if everyone starts yelling at once, we don't know who to listen to. So you need to be very careful about broadcasting messages. So Gossip Sub 1.1 adds in some more security mechanisms to try and stop people from all yelling at once. So we need that before we can hit mainnet and be ready. So at Lighthouse, we are doing kind of a 2-phased audit. So we have a security audit locked in with Trail of Bits. We start the first phase of it in 2 weeks minus 1 day. And that means that we attack everything from so if you imagine have the network at the bottom, and then you have the, the database and block process, signature verification above it. We kind of cut it off at the network. We explain to Trail of Bits some assumptions about how the network works. Then they're going to review upwards. And then we're going to go into multi-client testnets. We're going to implement Gossip Sub 1.1. After we've learned some things from multi-client and we have Gossip Sub 1.1, we're going to get Trail of Bits to come back, and they're going to do the bottom half in entirety, and then they're going to get what's going to go across again the top half of it. So yeah, we have our first review starting in less than 2 weeks, which is exciting and terrifying.
Yeah, it all feels like it's so close, even though we're still looking at months before rollout, but it all feels so close right now.
Yeah, it's getting close. There's a lot of momentum. Things are happening. We have testnets running and things happening. It's just it's like one of those things where you I only ever see the things that I need to do in front of me. Sometimes taking a step back and looking how far we've come is is pretty impressive.
Well, and that's interesting because one of the struggles as you know, I refer to myself as an end user, is every day it's like, how much progress has been made? How close are we? And it's like riding in the backseat of the car and you're like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And it's really, no, shut up.
Yeah, totally. I feel you. I think a lot about that.
So I think it's time for us to begin wrapping up. Lamboshi, Paul, Patricia, do you all have anything you'd like to add?
If you didn't get your token,
People.
if you didn't get your token, message me.
Okay, so Lamboshi still has the POAP tokens. You can probably catch him later in Discord if you didn't get one here, if you can prove that you were here. There are a couple business notes I want to bring up. We're interested in getting the timing of this meeting to the best time for everyone. So I plan to send out a survey. To the people that are in here now, you are the people I'm most curious about. You stayed to the end of the call, so you have some interest in this. So if you will look on reddit.com/r/ETHstaker for this survey and let us know what time works best for you. We'll probably take the mode of those times, or I'm not sure. We'll work it out, but we just want to know when works best for you. I'm also very interested in a new platform. I don't know if it's new, a platform I just learned about called remo.co, remo.co. And we're going to potentially plan to move our meetings there. It allows breakout rooms after the main talk so that groups of people can communicate and network and talk about whatever. So I'm looking forward to that. Paul, it was incredible to speak with you. I love not only that you know so much about it, but that you can come down to the level of the mere mortals and let us know what you're thinking. It's been really enlightening for all of us. I'm sure it's really been enlightening for me. So thank you so much for your time tonight.
No worries. Thank you. Thanks everyone for listening and for sticking with us while we push this across the line.
Great. All right. Good night, everyone.
Have a good one.
Or good
Thank
morning.
you.
Good morning, Paul. Have a great day.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
See you. Bye.